Hello everyone, my name is Janan Bana and I'm an instructor in the Department of Human Nutrition, Food and Animal Sciences here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Today we are going to be talking about multiple choice exams and strategies to improve your scores on these types of tests. For some of you, especially those of you who have just entered college, this format may be somewhat unfamiliar and may take a while to get used to. Today, we will give you tips to prepare for the exam and also tips on answering questions, along with a few examples in the nutrition field. First, we will talk briefly about exam preparation. The first step is simply to study. It is important to study throughout the course and not just right before your exam, as multiple choice tests are common in courses that cover a lot of factual information. It is very important to review the material as you move through it in lecture. The second tip is to practice. By this I mean practicing on sample exam questions if you have access to a study guide or old exams. Instructors often provide these, so if you have access to them, be sure to make use of them. Now I'm going to walk you through the steps to take when you start tackling a question. First, I'm going to explain all of the steps, and then we're going to see an example. So, these are our steps. First, always cover up the response options with a piece of paper or with your hand while you read the stem or body of the question. Then, looking at the stem of the question, see if the correct response comes to mind. Now, uncover your responses. If you see the response that already came to mind, circle it, and then read over the other responses to be sure you have selected the best option. So, here is a sample question. Now, remember that the very first step is to cover up your response options, leaving you with the stem of the question. Now, we will read the question and try to anticipate the correct response. The question reads, in experimental studies, the group that does not receive the treatment being tested is called what? After reading this question, I recall that the control group is the one that does not receive the treatment in an experiment. So, now I uncover my responses, circle the control group, and check to make sure none of the other responses are better, which in this case, they are not. So, we just had an example in which our expected response was listed when we uncovered the response options. But what if you do not see the expected response after you uncover your response options? Now, we are going to consider some strategies to eliminate responses that are probably wrong. Remember that none of these strategies will always work, but they may be helpful in some cases. The first tip is to beware of responses that use absolute words, such as always or never. These responses are less likely to be correct than ones that use conditional words, like usually or probably. Another helpful hint is in regards to questions that include all of the above response options. If you can verify that more than one of the other responses is probably correct, then choose all of the above. Jotting down notes that come to mind during the testing period is another helpful strategy. If you are allowed to write on the exam, make notes as you go to help you recall information. This may be particularly helpful when you come across a vocabulary word that you don't fully remember. It may also help you to brainstorm other words or phrases that relate to the question. By writing these on the exam, you may be able to remember the meaning of the word or put the word into context. Notes are also helpful if you need to leave the question and return to it after answering the remaining questions. The next tip applies only to questions that require the use of math. If you need to estimate the correct answer, it may be easier to use round numbers, such as 2, in problems that require the use of decimals, such as 2.2. This will help you to approximate the right choice. We will see a specific example of how to use this strategy in the coming slides. Our next tip deals with questions and answers with multiple pieces of information. First, read the question carefully to understand each piece of information being presented and determine if all of the information is relevant to the question. If a piece of information is irrelevant, cross out this phrase or sentence. Circle the key pieces of information in the question. This will help prevent you from being overwhelmed or distracted by extra information. If the answers contain multiple pieces of information and you can confirm that any one piece of information is incorrect, then the entire answer is incorrect. You may then eliminate that choice. Now we will turn to questions and answers with technical words that you don't know. There is a common myth that if an answer contains a word you don't know, the answer is incorrect. On the contrary, technical words are typically the most important words in a question or answer, so you may need to employ a brainstorming technique to recall the meaning of a word. Finally, remember, if you leave an answer blank, there is no possibility to earn a point. Leaving an answer blank is the same as answering incorrectly. You might as well guess on an answer rather than leave the answer blank. Then you at least have a chance of guessing correctly. The next tip is to use your time wisely. Go through and attempt to answer all of the questions before you linger on the challenging questions. If you are not able to choose an answer within 30 seconds of reading the entire question, move on to the next question, and then return to the challenging question after all other questions are answered. Also, if the exam is timed, be sure to use the entire time to answer questions. Use this as an opportunity to make sure all bubbles are filled in completely, to recheck math calculations, and to revisit challenging questions. Now, we are going to put a couple of our strategies for eliminating incorrect responses into action with a couple of sample questions. So, to answer this question, we first cover our response options and read the STEM. The STEM reads, increased risk for which of the following conditions is linked with obesity? After reading this, I think heart attack might be one possible option. I now uncover my responses. I see heart attack, but I also note that all of the above is an option. I know that if I can verify that another option is also correct, I can select all of the above. I remember that hypertension or high blood pressure is also linked with obesity, so I know at least two of these are correct, and can now select all of the above. This next question is an example of one that requires the use of math. As we mentioned before, if you need to estimate the correct answer, it may be easier to use round numbers rather than decimals to approximate multiplication and division. First, I cover my response options. The question reads, convert pounds to kilograms. 150 pounds is how many kilograms? Dividing 150 by 2.2 is a little challenging, so you may choose to estimate by dividing 150 by 2 instead. This gives you an answer of 75 kilograms, which, although it isn't exactly correct, places you near a possible answer. I uncover my responses and see that 68.2 is the closest answer to my estimate of 75. In this case, that is correct. Here is another question. First, I cover my response options and read the STEM. The STEM reads, which substance is an energy source but is not considered to be a nutrient? Let's say I have no idea. I uncover my responses, think about it a bit, make some notes about each of the response options using the knowledge I have, and I still cannot figure out the answer. I remember that to have a chance at earning a point on this question, I should at least take a guess. So I select C. In this case, C is indeed correct, so I have earned a point. Now, a few final tips for completing your exam. Be sure that you have filled in the appropriate bubbles carefully in pencil. Be sure to fill them in completely and erase any stray marks, as the Scantron machine may not recognize your answer. After you finish, go back and check your work. Remember that each bubble should be filled in, even if it's only a guess. Finally, I wish everyone the best of luck on your multiple choice tests. I hope you have found this video to be useful, and I know you will have lots of success completing your exams.